Uje Lama Sanje Baje Sanjola Junda Ujotsun Tembe Shenjo La Nime Yejun Jamsun Jumnanjo Yikun Namjo Veda Benjoba Shiso Somedo Chubo Jebe Genye Jamanu Shaba Yetsojo Batsanda Macha Shola Jeyara Tabe Tasha Tumanya Deshe Wonzo Sambala Kaba Songa Lingolo Zeta Gewa Dune Shanjo Chemo Shi Buje Joshe Medo Lo Nishi Yide Jamba De Sanje Sengo Mige Roga Nanda Shinla Jewa Shu 무슨 얘기가 상관이야? 응? 뭐야? 내가 또 일사가 가기도 해. 그래서 그래서 다 있는 자식들에 다 보고 참아라. 얘네 저저 얘네 로종 데스 투마 소메스. 로종 로종 데스 투마 소메스. 잠깐만요. Just too agitated? Disturbed. So it looks like there's some new faces here today. That's great. Welcome. Tashidalik to everyone here, all of you. Did your Lojong this week, was it disturbing? Did it agitate you? Yeah? Maybe this past week, everybody, there was a kind of a big problem that arose for everybody. Maybe. Maybe it's the perfect time for training in Lojong.
Yeah, no, 치킨 좀 마카지 고속하시고 남들의 시에도 좀 말이야. 사례를 지금 뭐죠? 그래서 나 당고처럼 코너 배치 너무 왔어요. 그래서
So our preliminary elements, the beginning for our meditation practice. Now Lopen is going to demonstrate. There are some new faces here. So Lopen will demonstrate what we call the expelling of the stale winds. So if you're completely unfamiliar with this, then watch him. So everybody watch Lopen.
chenyel maje wato no tushirire che bandores.
So this is like cleansing a vessel or a glass before putting a clean substance or clean water into it. Practice of expelling the stale winds. It's cleansing the vessel of our body.
다 되긴 참나 되는 거랑 그 얘네가 선견 탐지 대화도 돼 동날 당car 밴드 데빅 얘네 공항 토바시 제거 대체 등의 냠들의 그 상마 그냥 그런 데 쓰지 마죠. 소리가
following this, we engender the proper motivation, give rise to or transform our intention, our motivation for why we're engaging in spiritual practice, receiving teachings, or whatever it may be. So that motivation is that we're to engender, give rise to, and then meditate on, is the thought that may all sentient beings, every single one, be endowed with happiness, well-being, and free of suffering. And every single sentient being must attain the level of stable or everlasting bliss, happiness of Buddhahood. And it is for that reason that I will engage in spiritual practice. So that's the motivation, or to engender the motivation of bodhicitta. So now we'll meditate on that as our motivation and give rise to it.
Ini nggak ada ini soal apa? Ini soal tercipta, ini kau sedih, ini nggak soal tak. Jadi soal tak, kamu nggak ada ini tak 사지 당고마 되네 좀 사지 당기기 뭐고 생긴다 다른 거랑 공부되는 막 손도 대차기 인게도 아니 뒤에서 나도 되네요 아니 소란다 되네 말아들 지금 이제 나도 소 사마치제 되네 맞고 뭐지 yes
Minta menunggu yang apa deh cukup yang ini
nunggu 아니요.
So next comes our supplication, the prayers, the preliminary prayers. So this week we're focused on impermanence. So from the single page that was going around. So we'll start with this prayer, reciting it once in English from Tulku Sang-ngag Rinpoche, or in English, I pray to the glorious sacred Lama. We pray there and then up through, and then follow that with what we call the homage and ask for extra.
The third page?
No. This is different than what we've done every other week.
아니,
We passed them out last week.
아니, 나라도 미국도 안 보다 차차를 만들니까 그냥 사람치고요. 다 됐니까 손들 때요.
So the first section of Lojong, on the Lojong, the mind training focused on the contemplation on the freedoms and advantages, is complete now. So now we've entered into the second section, which is the Lojong relating to the contemplation on impermanence. So it's a different section, and the prayers that you begin the practice with are slightly different, if that wasn't clear before. I don't know. So we passed those out last week because I thought we were going to start impermanence last week too, but we didn't, so if you still have those, that's great. And then there was a number that were going around. So is that clear now? Okay. So first we'll recite it in English.
Yeah.
Together. I pray to the glorious sacred Lama, the essence of all Buddhas in the 3 times, and the embodiment of the 4 kayas. Grant me the blessings of empowerment. Bless me that the extraordinary realization of the profound path arises in my master. Kind Guru, grant me blessings that the enlightened qualities of time taken into your experience, death and impermanence, will arise in my master. Seeing this threefold world as a fleeting illusion, you have left this life's concerns behind like spittle in the dust. Accepting all hardships, you have followed in the footsteps of masters of old. Fearless teacher, at your feet I bow. Impermanence is everywhere, yet I still think things will last. I have reached the gates of old age, yet I still pretend I am young. Bless me and misguided beings like me, that we may truly understand. So now, make prayers yourself. Supplicate. May my mind mixed with the mind of the Guru. May my clinging to permanence be reversed, be eliminated, and so forth.
La zone de l'on jo temba yung du kuchen jubi yung ngani ko tsik sanje ju lam di no ro tsa dambi chala nyaram phawrit sala ko to me de shong song lami ka lo manor ba ranglo jibing nge jen da xie ji la dong lami da ju xing je lo la dong lami da ju xing je lo la dong lami da ju xing ji lo la so sta ni ta garan ze 다 가서 아니 다 음악에 나와서 다 말하는 담주니까 아니 다 치게 성제 다 들은 아니 다 추강 니바데 다 추강 니바데 근데 쪼가 다당하는 저네 가리를 했으나 아니 답을 아니 답을 보마스 다 되게 나는 망식 전혀래 다 가르세 저 되니 가르세 너지 집단에서 맞아본 공부 주지 신경에서 맞아본 공부 애니 담비 집으로서 맞아본 공부 제고 답고로서 맞아본 공부 애니 배던 하소로서 맞아본 공부 지진 예매로서 맞아본 공부 듬바 잡고로서 맞아본 공부 남바 든 Yes.
So our last teaching, we concluded the discussion on the first section on contemplating on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. So today we are beginning the second section, which is primarily focused on impermanence. So to contemplate on this section has 7 subdivisions, parts to it. So they are the contemplation on the impermanence of the outer container, or the world, the universe, contemplation on the inner contents of the universe, namely sentient beings. Second and third is the impermanence of exalted beings, the holy beings. Fourth is the contemplation on the impermanence of beings in power, powerful beings with dominion over something. Fifth is the contemplation on various different examples of impermanence. Sixth is the contemplation on the uncertainty of the time of death. And seventh is what do we call it? The always reflecting on impermanence, or constant remembering of impermanence.
다 가운데에서 당하는 속에 다들 반복돼. 얘네 다 너희 집에는 상태 맞아본 거 봐서. 나도 다 가운데 너희들 다 가려는 것은 다 말하는 속에 생겨야 담지. 니사 말하는 속에 대사니. 다 맞아 집에는 상이와. 얘네 집에는요. 다 다당하는 속에 아니 집 방신이 제가 말하는 속에 집 말하는 속에 나게 딱 와서 때마다 통고요 그래와. 근데 다 말하는 저 아니 집시 거의 양성 다버 집 때문에 되게 되지. 이내양 때문에 상호하고 또는 대형 배민도스. 대양 다버 준 맛이 맞지. 근데 코페르께서는 아니 지야 호신 진 조라게 답변 말아봐 답을 진행하는 정도더니 조라게 가게 되는 거지.
The first of these, the impermanence of the container and the vessel, the world. So we call it the vessel or the container. So what we're referring to by that is that which is where sentient beings abide, the place where we all stay, where we exist, where we are. That is the world, that's the universe. So we call it the container that we are contained within. So our world around us seems to be quite permanent and stable, stably there. But when we see various things, they seem stable, always there. There's mountains, there's the environment, the oceans. They're all there permanently, stably. But when we contemplate, just directly think about the situation, contemplate it on it, then we come to the conclusion that the environment around us, the world that we inhabit, is constantly in flux, in constant transformation, is never static, is always changing, transforming, becoming something else. Really, that's its nature. The nature of the world, the universe that we abide in, is a nature of change, of transformation.
좀 깊겠는데요. 즉 혀봐, 내봐, 즉박생이 지금 없습니다. 대변 답변은 말한 저거 대라 깊겠는데 담제야. 강보리 다당 안 저거 매 통제 되려고 이제 레비도. 럼바 이게 그래서 당 말한 저 가르사. 아니 럼바 이게 되게 줄도 많고 지켜 가래 차 용도죠 차도. 왜는 나도 그래 캐년을 보면 아긴 하고 그랬어. 럼바 뭐고치. 봐. 사이드 그 점수 그 걔는 저 상대에서 딱 들려오고 대상다 맞아 참 하고요. 와도 가장 알아서 강의 봐 들려오고 당고는 거라서 그지 또마스 야바라고 지니 요조지라는 거. 참 제스키는 거죠. 뭐 꽝꽝 망고가 나한테 가래 빨리 척게 나가는 거. 대답을 척으니까 그냥 럼바 이게도 요르행 되지. 따서 약간 좀 민감한다고 잘 말하면서 야 처음에 이러왔어.
For our universe, our world, really we can break it down to existing within three phases. The phases of becoming, coming into existence, the phase of remaining, and the phase of destruction, being destroyed. So the world that we see around us right now hasn't always been this way. In the beginning of the world, universe coming into form, it didn't look like this at all. It's transformed gradually through much happening, through a tremendous amount of things happening, change happening, over a very long time, and gradually, progressively, the world has come to appear what we see now. For example, to really have a clear understanding of this, go to somewhere like the Grand Canyon. Standing at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, looking up, you can see very clearly all these different phases of development. You see the different layers of rock. You can identify the phases of the Grand Canyon, or of wherever you are, when it was under an ocean, when it was earth, when it was dry land, all the different phases of transformation you can see. So all of that is part of this process of becoming, the universe coming into form and taking various different shapes, colors, and coming into formation.
Ini jengaran so ke chalsani ini yang ate nebe tu kaps ne ko so pe ne na te sa ngaran so kalam chagya de saje ini so na ju so ke ya e jela ne so nebe tu kap tu wa ne yang de na gin jibe tu kap chi jiba de ram yenda ini yang ko so ka sa de ji ko je ko wa.
So coming into formation complete, in a sense, then there is a bit of a short period of just abiding. Then the universe or world can be said to be just remaining as it is. The process of formation is mostly complete, and this period of abiding is when sentient beings, when the inner contents are proliferating, are most like developing. The world, the universe has taken shape enough that now the beings can develop, proliferate. So that's the period of abiding, and then following this, there's the period of destruction. And likewise, the period of destruction, too, is a gradual process of destruction.
아니, 자, 배는 그다음 나란지, 아니, 로직이 나와있네요. 알아서 그, 다, 다다 생각만 간가도, 너무 간가 세보는요. 세보대 간가더니 작은 거리네요. 다다랑 졸고도 봤어. 다, 대나 인지 나란서 배더니, 다. 대나게 저게 다 배는 뜻을 비교하고 저기 나와 배에서 맞아 다 참만 jor대가 열었어.
Absolutely.
뜻을 맞아 다 생계해.
This process also parallels the process of transformation and change that you can witness in a single year or two. The process of the transformation of the 4 seasons. Where now we can see the coming to the conclusion of all the leaves changing color, dying, falling off their branches. Everything that was green is turning yellow. All the green grass is now yellow, and soon that yellow grass likewise will freeze, will enter into winter. So right now, directly we can witness the similar pattern of change, transformation.
다 되는 게 자라 충청으로 제일 제압이나요. 다 배는 가서 매도로 제일 차이야바이나. 다 거기 제기도 봐. 이나양 대라양 제압이 되갑지 내배 되갑지. 얘는 제기네요. 매버려야지. 어디서 봤어.
And we can look at smaller examples too. Flower, a simple flower in front of us. Won't last a whole year. We don't need a whole year to witness this, but it goes through the likewise phases of being born, developing, abiding, and then its phase of destruction, where it's no longer there, gone.
다 들리지 인상. 얘는 다 나서 그 기도하는 게 다 나서 다 너지 기대 다바서 피해도 값. 뭐다바데 가래서 지그래서나 얘는 나서 나보기 용어. 얘는 매다 취 직도해서 그래서 속을 저래. 다 내가 양 기도한데라요. 근데 다 배는 just 나서 민다바데 지금 얘네 같이 송. 배는 다 나라서 그래. 매직 세드 다 나라서 얘는들 가시지가 얘네 니마 얘네 나라서 가래 가서 니마 등나서 빠샤지 매배다 추지기 있어요. 내가 롱첸 방에 얘네 스님 와서 놓아야 너 스님 와서 나는 그래서도 그냥 와서 니마한테 생각 좀 민주화 등이야 그러지 많이 봐. 니마한테 차쇼 쳐는 거네. 그래봐. 니마 찍기 차쇼게 가래가리 니마한테 차쇼 쳐는 거네. 니마 찍는 니기 차쇼게. 소음가 근데 대리스키는 니마한테 차쇼 거니. 이렇게 좋은 거야지 시행 왔어.
바이두.
아? 단디 등산하면서 답변이 쓰레기. 우연히서 돌아. 아 니마한테 잠벌랭그 조쇼 쳐도 도고 야바다. 내가 때니까 애들 쓰레다. 애니 하람 때문에 강을했던 강차 탐지만 쉬용해야 돼서 그 세번하고 이래도 왔어. 이게 너무 짜든 거는 그때 빠지 지금 로그를 했어요.
The phase of destruction of our world. Generally, there's this phase we talk about, the destruction of the container of the world. So how does this happen?
생기면서 대화를
신사 전문가. So how is this going to come about? How is this explained to happen? Generally, it's said this the destruction of the world comes about through the elements of fire and water. But there are some variant explanations on how this happens. Generally, it happens through fire or water. Sometimes it's said that or taught that through the power of 7 suns, there will be progressively 7 ever hotter suns dawning that destroy the world, followed by a single phase of water that destroys the world. So that's kind of, and then there's an explanation on how all that happens. But Longchen Rabjam in his text, Semnik Noso, resting in the nature of mind, in English, explains it slightly different. Where instead of saying that there are 7 individual suns that arise that cause this the destruction of the world, that it's one single sun getting hotter and hotter. So a single sun that's hot, and then that sun gets hotter to the point where it's twice as hot as it was, and then 3 times as hot, up to 7 times as hot. And by that increased heat of the single sun, then the world is destroyed. So this maybe fits with what we can directly observe of the world today, where each year it seems the sun is getting hotter, or our planet's getting hotter. The polar ice caps are melting. And if this process continues, then it would fit perfectly with Longchenpa's explanation there. That through this world heating up hotter and hotter and hotter, it's destroyed.
알았다. 내니들도 다 맞죠? 그것도 정말 나랑서 그렇게 지 강차스니들도 다 나이 과학이 잡을때 그래서 그냥 마요 강라서 강그라와 다 그만 했더니 강그치 강차들도
강차.
됐어요. 됐어요. 그래서
글쎄? 강차.
Yeah. Ice.
Ice.
Glacier.
Glacier.
다 그래서 스바 차고에 강을 했을 때 서로 저기에 말했어. 희역이라. 이날 농대들이라 그러는 거 있는 그래서 희역도 다 당보들에 다 깔고 동이라고 요랬어. 아니 갈래마다 알아서 그랬더니 차고 z라고 차. 타마들 말고 상라고 차 그랬어. 근데 대들들이 뒤에서 됐어.
니도 돼. 타마상가고 차리.
Z. Z는
Onyx? Z? B?
어야. 되니?
나루 드로기.
타자죠. 스칼본 나고.
Mixture.
우선 떨어먹고. 자, 등산 강사만 휴사샤. 등산 빠르게 나왔더니 너무 싫어요, 말아. 마보상을 그걸 나는 그거를 다 마보를 도와. 나 치료도 된다. 정말 정확하시게 통만 만들고 강을 하고. 나 등산 강가만 휴니 되다 말고 상이라고 차원을 쓰는데 난 은이 그 드라고 된 마보를 도와. 근데 치료도 보면 가고 넘도를 다 바사라는 그리고 다 가시 시역하지 말게 어쨌든 차고 이런 걸 봐. 나 등산 다 누가 얘가 다 됐어. 누가 다 됐을 것도 발이 작아도 아마도 기타는 하는 상황 휴사.
Rinpoche was a child, there were many glaciers. And everybody thought the glaciers were, everlasting and unchangeable. They'd be there forever. But there was a particular prophecy of Guru Rinpoche that talks about this, talks about the glaciers saying, first you'll see white and then you'll see like... First they'll be white like a conch shell. Then they'll become, just like then they'll become mixed color like a Z stone, and then in the end they'll be red like copper.
So I'm just talking about the mountain range behind the Cochin Monastery.
Hmm.
Mayogara, glacier name.
Marukanda?
Mayogara.
Marukanda.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's this prophecy on this particular glacier behind Rinpoche's childhood monastery of Gochin. So now Rinpoche is seeing pictures of these glaciers, and they're pretty much entirely gone. During this process of, them completely melting, the color changed in this way. It became like mixed, because under the glaciers was sediment, and as they melted, then the color changed, and then really underneath all the snow there was this like copper-colored red rock that now is, seen there. Yeah, so they're mostly entirely gone now, these glaciers. In the winter, there's some snow there. It'll snow sometimes, but for the most part, they're entirely gone.
뭐야? 된다고 이래도 왔더니 나서 초신이더니 양소어디서까 강서만 그 초기 잡아서야 채채 뭐라 초진 강서 막 힘도 잠번에 그냥 나다 때서는 야한테서도 왔 잠서야 채채도 벌써도 나서 나기 시작하고 뭐도 나기 치라서 되게 열었어. 그랬더니 나라서 다 대답했어.
So also in line with these explanations on the destruction of the world, the water's rising. So we all know, Rinpoche says maybe better than him, we all know the ocean levels are rising these days. And the glaciers are coming down, melting down, and the oceans are rising up. We're all fully aware of this. We can see this.
알았어. 다 대답부터 빼놨다 말한 속에 대소를 하고 말해. 참았을 때 다 대답이 말한 속에 주소지 얼마인데 깨지는 제가 봐. 제대 버려마도 깨지기야 코로나 이렇게 대대는 거.
So these are the more coarse examples that we can see. But on the subtle level, the world is changing every single moment, moment by moment. That is its nature. It's in flux constantly.
나는 저 아니 지금 뭐 보기는 한다. 나는 생계 소대에 한다. 함께 비디기를 맞아 교르되도 봐.
Not just external entities, things have this nature, but likewise sentient beings as well. Beings with life, living creatures as well, have this nature of being in a state of constant change.
이내양 다당 말한 속에 가동은 지 커서다 지 딱완다고 지 지관다고 지 통되고요. 그래서 아니 다 배는 다당 말한 저 아니 배 쉬위나 배는 되는 말한 로다 미셔라고 흘라 말한 다당 맞서 배는 와라나 새끼 주목한가 여러와 간다 간가 나나 맞추다나 뒤추디가라는 게 나나 알로 미셔 뭐나 나한테는 로인사 상고요 맞추디가라는 나나 알로 미셔 뭐나 우리 전에 요 말아 이게 좀 말하는 로사 그 추대 이제 들어가서 건 로사를 요 말해 얘네 까마지에 내가 요 말해 코어드는 빼듯이 그지 얘네 말아서 싸면 뒤쳐들 대가를 내봐요 쳐들어가라 딱 애만 뒤는 하고 흉물인데 근데 그 까마지 내가 말한테 나만 로사를 치면 코어들 이제 그 교사를 요 말하다 싸면 해보다네
But we don't see things that way. We see things as being stable, permanent, lasting. One simple example. 20 years ago, I was in Varanasi on the banks of the Ganges River. Went in the Ganges River there. So I may go back now and think that, go back to the same spot. It's the same water I went in. You can have this perception, but in actuality, it's absolutely not the same water. water was gone the moment you went in. The water was never static right there. The water of a river doesn't stay at all. It's in constant flux. That's how everything is. Even though you can have this perception, oh, I'm back in the river Ganga where I was 20 years ago.
그러니까 그래서 내가 말하는 속에 수익 말하는 속에 안에 나가 내리 기대하면서 담겨요. 뭐는 지금 가서 아니 다 가르쳐 봐. 아니 맞아봐. 유해라. 다 대한 고정 가서 교당 끼어날 때가 저러. 교당 끼어날 때는 고정 두비어서 교당 끼어날 때는 제일 좋아. 얘네야 대한 가네라고 연구를 말이 엔데 가면도. 걔 지금 노리나 배나 다 등산 알아서 배나 사 요야. 얘네 배도 계속 롱 소비야. 얘네 드랍면 그때만 뭐지도 깨지 찍어요. 맞아요. 근데 지금 말하면서 번역 가려요. 대한 시바지도 왔어. 근데 등산 마음도 쉬어줘도 왔어. 너를 내리나. 너무 옛날다. 너 지금 제일 있어도 지금 말도. 삼사나 거야요 말아. 등산 다 배를 샤르게 잡게 그렇게 상 잡고서 너를 제 잡고서 쓰고도 치안한테 운석 잡고도 쓰고도 선홍이 혼도 쓰고도 마음도 와.
So the whole world is like this. It is impermanent. It possesses the nature of being at change. So this change, transformation, arises through causes and conditions. The destruction of the world comes about through various different causes and conditions, which may occur gradually. Causes and conditions gradually lead to destruction of the world, aspects of the world. But also, all of a sudden, circumstances can arise. One major condition or cause can arise that destroys things, parts of the world. So it doesn't have to be this slow, gradual process, and it's really entirely unsure how destruction will happen. It can happen through slow, gentle causing conditions. It can happen all of a sudden through earthquakes, hurricanes, great winds, great disturbances in the elements and so forth. Who knows, really? And these days, it definitely seems that such instances are happening more and more. Where it used to be in a year or two, you'd hear about, in the whole world, 1 or 2 major natural disasters happening. Now it seems like they're happening all the time. There's an earthquake in the east. Yesterday, there was one in the west today, sort of thing. There's a hurricane up north or down south. There's things happening all the time now.
다 강한다야 말해서 넓힐 때 야야 나좀 용왕갈 땡긴 차고라. 아니 다 그냥 줘야 돼 용왕갈. 서서 지금 처음 용왕갈게 그냥 알아서 주셔야 되는 제일 좋아.
This container that is the world came about through the development of the 5 elements, and likewise will be destroyed and is destroyed through the disturbances of the 5 elements, the causes and conditions coming together in their relation to the 5 elements.
그래요. 삼성 로버트를 직감을 연애 강시. 용 무슨 말입니다. 직전에 뭐만 내놨어도 뜨겁더니 직전 상마지를 내가 종이로 와. 그때 가서도 하고요. 가서 생계 전복을 열어. 가래서 종을 하고요, 말아. 얘네야, 얘네 참만 알아서 얘네 직전에 참만 퍼져를 놓네. 다 하려면 얘네 지금 말아도 소리로 지어라. 지금 말하바로 이건 사마지 권유지만 이걸 받아 호텔
And sometimes major incidents happen, something major may happen all of a sudden that completely transforms or destroys life on the planet. For example, the dinosaurs, an asteroid, one or whatever it was. A major incident came that completely transformed all life on the planet. So that can definitely happen. You don't really know. These great scientists trying to understand how everything changes, everything works together. They still can't understand all of that. Well, in the meantime, all of a sudden, temporary major catastrophes can happen that would completely, upend all life on Earth.
그래서 말이야, 되게 좋은 여자 뭐봐 용서를 와. 다다양 용서가 되면도다. 그래서 뭐가 딱히 봐. 저기는 뭐만 뒤값이야. 하자 뭐 싸웠다고 하지 말아봐. 저는 꼭 계직질을 딱히 파셔들에서 잡고 있고 딱서 세버려 봐.
Since such occurrences have happened in the past, then it's this clear indication that they again could potentially happen in the future, or could happen right now. Because we have this evidence from the past, we can't, eliminate such occurrences as being possibilities for right now.
그래서 지금 100년 들어왔어 봐. 민소요. 올라서 와서 들어있더니 개시리다 조금 나와서 남주를 받아 조금 가서 봐줘야 되는 남주 생기한 이야기였어. 친구들 대해서 이났더니 기득사랬어.
Point being, we can have no real confidence, no certainty in the situation of the world and the universe. So that sums up, that can suffice for our explanation of the impermanence of the container, the world. And now our main topic, the main focus for our emphasis of impermanence, the inner contents of the universe, the sentient beings, us beings.
알았어. 남주지 생겨야지. 다 집안에 말아서 참 쓰기 집에 그랬더니 차고 나기전에 말아서 그 남주기 생겨서 también yo mal 때니 차 연결해서.
So the inner contents, the sentient beings, us beings, really are parallel the process of the world, the universe. We come together through the 5 elements, through the coming together of the 5 elements.
대대 말하면서 그 르대양 말하면서 그 집에다 남인 중화세고요. 그러다 말하면서 그 얘네
남인 중화.
남인 중화. 그러다 말하면서 그 얘네 월드롱레 샤드 사레 차드 초레 어디 메리 얘네 다 가르쳐도 남시겠다 남가져오래.
And there's the inner aspect of the 5 elements too that exists within our body. The inner aspect of air is breath. Inner aspect of water is blood. Fire relates to heat, the warmth of the body. The flesh to earth, and our consciousness to the element of space.
다 지금 중화된 나네. 다양한 아주 많은 중화돼요. 다 말아서 빼내요. 근데 다 당고드네 쓰바 놓아서 서로 들. 근데 다 되는 말아서 그때 다 한바 이게 되는 말아서 야 차려와. 차도 값을 되네. 다 말아서 그렇게 되네. 당고 중화돼서 서로 들. 그래서 보고서 다서 차. 한바 이게 되는 말아서 야 차. 너, 근데 다 깨버려. 아, 와서 기회봐, 성상. 아, 내가랑 니들은 말하면 좀 가렸던 거여서 기회봐 인상? 아니 기회봐 이해봐니? 아, 척차요. 그래. 가르치는 거죠. 기회봐네. 유황가는 뺀 기회봐네. 기회봐 인상, 기회봐 이해봐다 가르쳐 살았어. 그래. 뭐든.
So the coming together of the outer elements and the inner elements, the initial gathering together of the winds, the different aspects, the winds at conception, and those gathering together, then the other elements all forming together, coming together, becoming or taking the shape of the being to be born, and the being takes shape and then is born. That's all this process of becoming, the becoming of a being, and taking birth, and then having taken birth, anything that is born, that arises through causes and conditions, that is born, it follows, will at some point be destroyed. Something that has been born, come into fruition, then is inevitable that at some point it will meet its destruction. So our body, our being, is coming together for a particular formation of the five outer and inner elements. Having come together, now we're born, then at some point it will be destroyed, it will fall apart.
아니, 왜 나다? 그냥 말하면서 아니 다티 빼면서 잘 그냥 좀 나도록 좀 잘잖아. 코 제발 와. 제발 손상. 코 타면 이제 들어와. 대양 딱 말하면서 그것에서 직관에 아니 당고 고속가서 했다. 예, 근데 간에 롬바긴다. 얘네 딱 말하면서 그야. 얘네 와서 괜히 딱 맞을 말하고 이렇게 내세고 와. 제바스. 얘네 와서 말마야다. 지금 놀고 있네. 알아요. 와와. 얘네 배우면서 그 얘네 보고 그니까 담임니까 괜히니까 나와. 얘네 개바 얘네 시와 같은 시키는 말하면서 ramage to Yanko, Madati, John Roy.
Examples of this again are flower, example of a flower having been born, then it goes through this process of being born, coming into existence, and then transforming, constantly going through these different phases to meet its destruction. It's gone, dead. Likewise, us. First, we are born, taking birth, and we gradually progress through stages to our own destruction, our own death. We have names for these. We are born, we grow up, we mature, we're a child, we mature into adolescence, into adulthood, into late adulthood, into old age, and then meet with our death. So this is our impermanence. This is our gradual stages of impermanence, where we see this constant transformation. We're always changing. So that's the coarse understanding of our own impermanence. On a more subtle level, our body is changing in every single moment. Our body is in flux in every moment. And all of us beings, not one that escapes death. We will all die. There's not a single being that escapes that.
요르고 요르 주니 뭐다 봐서 땜고 매봐 요르한 주니 시에도 왜나 말한서도 늦더라 용한 안에 저래서 다가나 시에요 봐 용한 안에 용한 나고 돼 나서 야 제제데 그런 랑데 근데 말한서도 야 너제데 그런 요르고 왜나 나서 되네 내세도 가서 얘다지 랩도 코드는 중앙 나보대 나인게 근데 참 많이 안 받았어 근데 내차
참 많이 봐.
참 많이 안 봐?
내차.
내차
나차. 용나.
나저게 되네 여기 난 남국에 소화를 받는 그래서 왜나 매대야 중앙에 그때야 중앙에 근데 다 가난서 되는 늦어야 깨야 것은 중앙을 깨라 다 되나 빼나 중앙에 참 많이 봤어요 빼나 다 매대 흉체나 소나 근데 가서 차가래 그래 빼는 살기 내서 잘하고요 얘네 교육하면 저도 흉체이나 그냥 정말 감차고 빼나 대적으로 다 강할 때니 코야 강의 얘기 그래 너한테 차 양보다 양보 이거 값을 넣어야 계제도 줘지 참 많이 할 값을 되니 다 강가들은 대양가랑 좀 되니 그 잘하고요 되니 빼듯이 내기 좋죠 야 타마되는 가랑 좀 리대야 되니 중앙 코너 얘기 찍파 되니 시행계제는 되니 고조봐서 중앙 탐제 되니 고조야 싫어
Impermanence of our body is being. Permanence really means having the nature of being in flux or changing, always transforming, always changing. So this is like the definition of impermanence. Being always changing, always transforming, which means it's unstable. Naturally, there's no stability there. It's always changing, transforming. So the body having come together through the coming together of the five elements, when these five, and being in constant change, when these five elements are in imbalance, then that leads to sickness. What we call sickness is the transformation of the harmony of the five elements into an imbalanced state. That's the causes that lead to physical illness is that, the imbalance of the five elements. So in Tibetan medicine, we say the medicine is made up of the elements, or based on the elements, and likewise the body is based on the elements. Physical body arises through the five elements, and likewise the medicines are based on that as well, and interact in that way. Through imbalances of fire, when one has too much heat, too much fire, the element fire, then illnesses of fever predominate. When one has too much water element, then cold sicknesses arise. It acts as a cause that leads to cold sicknesses. When the elements of one's body are in balance, are in harmony, then one's health increases, is benefited. One's body is nourished. And likewise, when they're in balance, then the body suffers, and that leads to illness. When they're imbalanced, and then in the end, when the elements that make our body dissolve, dissipate, disappear, we die.
아니, 다 기타는 말하는 속을 다 늘려야 소화돼. 늘 소화돼 见. 좀 가르치려고 쓰이다. 매다. 뭐라? 아니, 다 그래서 당신 말하는 속을 늘 소화돼 자제해야 돼요. 아니, 얘네야 참삼아 네 탐제야. 애네 말하는 속을 대양 땅 말하는 속을 빼나 애네 양대 차로로 소진할 때 지키게 잘 하고 매 맞죠 가라 맞죠 근데 등산 많죠 괜찮게 좀 많죠 가라다 근데 매나 라면 좀 차요 난 나서 이치에서 거쳐라 봐这是不一样不用呀接呀的이치에서데 딱 매나 가라라서 봐 근데 그래서 돌리다 맞지 배드께서야 소진의 양반들 호양 상상은 마다 말한 거다. 마견제, 시견제, 지견시 차용도.
Generally speaking, to take care of our body, the main elements to increase the life of our body, to nourish us, to take care of our health, is what we eat, our food, and also the medicines we take, nutrients we take. These are all the conditions that lead to sustaining or making the body healthy, making the balance of the elements healthy and the body healthy. But sometimes these very things, the medicines we take or the food we eat, are not suitable for our constitution and become causes for illness. Okay. Now we can lead to all different types of things. Now we have cancer, all different types of cancer, and it's often believed these days that the predominant causes of cancer these days are what we're eating and medicines that we're taking even can be causing cancer, cause all types of different ailments. So these things, these conditions for to increase and sustain the health of our body, things that we put our trust in, that we have confidence in to keep us healthy, can often become the opposite, can become conditions that lead to sickness, even death, or the destruction of our body and the balance of the elements.
근데 말해서 소진에 대해서 용의 좀 지키에 대해서 망하는 좀 그래요. 아니 말하는 저거 치 콜요나 어떻게 체도 저거요래. 어떻게 어떻게 올라다 내가지 어떻게 체도 저거요래. 아니 말하는 저 얘네 빠지쳐서래 아니 상관이나 아니 그거야 소야당 옵체보 소야당 전제비 치도 서만 당겨요. 소야데 가르쳐도 열선 얘네 마토고 잡아 얘네 마토 빠지쳐서래 얘네 징에게 그 밤당 얘네 마토 이절 밤당 트라이브는 조도 야와라 다 비탐지 인제데 마토 빠지쳐서래 옵체 뭐지 승격제 가르쳐야 학습니다. 얘네 근데 앞에는 나초게 가르쳐야겠네. 나초 미라나 나초게 내가 미라도 쓰여봐. 직대 공제 가르쳐야 너저게 너들렉서야 마도 지금이야 특별히见的时候 녀는 그거 내가 아주 생각해 봐요.
These days, the conditions that support and sustain life are decreasing, and the conditions and things that destroy life are increasing. Our environment, the environment is being increasingly destroyed, torn apart, destroyed, eliminated, rid of. A lot of this arises from individuals, human beings, thinking solely about themselves, thinking, how do I increase my power, my side's power, my side's influence? How do I protect myself? And with that type of thinking, then we come up with all sorts of ways to destroy things, to harm. We have countless different types of weapons. chemical-based weapons, nuclear weapons, all sorts of things that can destroy others, destroy things, often based on this idea of how is it I'm going to increase and sustain my own power and protect myself and my side, without really thinking what that will actually lead to. So these are all conditions that we're coming up with as humans that are counterintuitive and counteractive to maintaining life. And they're all things that we're actually making. We're making these things that are directly counteractive to our own life, that are harmful for any kind of life, harmful to our life. So in this way and many others, the various different conditions that are harmful, destructive, are ever increasing, and things that sustain life, protect life, are always decreasing. This is really something to worry about, for us to be concerned with.
Gini, da, ngaces. Da, ada yang ini ngaras pena. Kita ngaras minta apa ini pada ta, ngaras sama je mesti baju lawa. Ada ngaras kasih ya pada ta, ini rena, renggo jangan tu lo jalan, lo jalan tanggi orang. 하체다 저기는 가시지 대요로 나한테 산다보다 로 자기에 저를 대게 근데 가시 열서 봐 집게나더니 내셨으면 좋더래요 얘는 자기로
야는 해주신 줄?
드려요
니 손상
자가 니 손상 나 가다 로 자가 딱 처음 다 내버려 때 가서 처음에 다 하고 그러다 이내다 다른 거라서 해야 돼 대치게 가려웠어 다 내가 와서는 책임 좀 놔. 애니 다 내가 말하는 거 보면 애니 다 남처럼 참이 집에 있는 매매스 와서 가르게 되니 애니 책을 해. 애니 사자 가만히 책을 해. 쟤 가르게 되는 책을 해. 그래서 가득 책을 해. 나 때가 와서는 다 때되면 놔.
Generally speaking, we all know things are impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. There's not anybody that doesn't have some kind of recognition of that. So with death, our own death as human beings, we have no real expectation to live longer than 100 years. 100 years is the absolute kind of limit. Maybe there's a few people these days that are over 100 years, 120, 130, maybe 2 or 3 of them on the planet. Really, it's about 100 years at the very longest we can expect to be around. And maybe the most important point for us to understand today, the most crucial point to be relayed to us regarding impermanence, is regarding our death. So death is certain. A condition that leads to our death is uncertain, completely unknown. So we all know we're going to die, but by what is it going to be that we die? Where are we going to die? When are we going to die? All these are uncertain, completely unknown.
나도 초직이 지금 알아서 세상에 막 세제지. 근데 지금 알아서라 얘기지 뭐지. 다 초직대 아니 맞아 그냥 노는 와. 그러니까 말아서 우치 얘네 가르쳤다고 남도 또면서 사용자로 초노서 얘네 배치해서 나차로 로버지 가장 나차면은 다다 투자 고비하는 거지. 근데 집 잠이라고 그래도 아 그래서 당시 맞아 그 내 연구를 이 연구 말에 세트해 준 거야. 그래서 나 그것도 얘네 말아봐. 그래봐. 네? 그래서 됩니다. 그래서 봐봐.
On the one hand, this death may happen, in old age is a gradual process. We move towards death. On the other hand, any number of conditions can arise at any given time and lead to our death. Car accident, plane crash, an earthquake, a flood, to name a few, any number of different conditions can all of a sudden happen that kill us. We might have some illness, some terminal illness that arises out of nowhere. Today we're not sick, tomorrow something. So that's what we mean. This is what we mean by impermanence, that we can't say with any definitive certainty when death will be met with. This is impermanence. This is the meaning of there is no permanence here. There is no knowing of that.
Yes. 다른 말은 스마트는 담배 집을 써본다고 보면서 말이지 말아서도 파이가 되는 말은 산지 샤게트 바이나 얘네 배드게서 말아서 아니 다고 막이 지금 가서 아니 자가 파고요나 예산만 뭐 파요를 들어오긴 나와 배드게서 딱 가놓고서 뭐 파요를 에 담지점 걔는 다다 로지점도 마도 위험 알아왔어.
Third contemplation. Contemplation of the impermanence of the exalted beings, the holy beings. So leave ourselves aside, consider the holy beings, the Buddha Shakyamuni, the great masters, the siddhas of India and Tibet, the great masters of Tibet, Khenpo Shantarakshita, Guru Rinpoche, Dharma King Trisung Detsen, and all of them. Today, we have nothing left of them but their histories, the stories of their lives. And the great Eastern masters of our own generation, likewise, all of them too have gone already. Khenpo Rinpoche, Dudum Rinpoche, and so forth. Pretty much all of them have gone.
초진이 얘네 다 대담지라 말한 선도 얘네 말하지 요래 가려 요래서는 나 그런 저 배드게 들었지 얘네 배는 다시 아주 가서 있나요 너 배는 다시 말한 저 아니 정말 배는 진짜다 가지 배는 이제를 배도 생에 요래더니 맞아 두담 욕생에 요래더니 대나게 배도 들었지 아니 그게 다 대나게 지금 가서 얘네 다 심하게 제 농대한테 소치를 줘 민다
신의 농장.
제 뭐바 내가 프랑시아
신의
뭐바 뭐부터 가래가래 제공을 못해서 그게 농대는 민다 봐도 이네요 다 강한들 민다 봐도 던지다 지금 가서 지다는 거 아무리 봐도 것 같아 다 나다 배치에서 나오는 진짜 다 대기 다 배치에서 짜는 로맨 생기들이 다 짜입니다 근데 선가 담비 집을 샀나요? 네. 배를 샀네. 나서는 되게 가와이 왔어.
All these great beings, like us in many ways. In some ways they are unique, different. Their ways of passing away are often quite different. Many attaining rainbow body, others remaining in tuktam, meditative equipoise of post-death state. Many their lives and ways of passing and qualities described in various different prophecies. At this point, this being will arrive, they'll have these qualities, they'll do this and so forth. So in those ways, they're quite unique. And the one feature of them as well, of enlightened beings, is they actually have power over their life, control of their life force. But of all of them, there hasn't been one that has said, okay, with power over my life, I will remain forever without displaying death. There hasn't been one that's done that. All of them have, under their own control, through their own unique ways, have passed away as well. So contemplating on these, this is how it is for the holy beings, enlightened, exalted beings. Then what need to mention us? Who are we?
ね、다 기억있다고 생각한다. 기억있다고 생각했다. 직내를 하셨어요. 그래서 답변해요. 그런 쪽 직다 선언대 되는 마세 그 파트. 되는 직 거저 파트에다 애니야 애니 토릭 소 베지luôn. 그냥 저처럼 거야. 플롱로그레스. 배다다 더 감독했다. 더 감성이 돼서 동기났다고 말해서 그래.
Next, we have the contemplation of the impermanence of powerful beings. This is really addressing worldly deities, the worldly gods. So the worldly gods who remain only as long as their merit affords them that. When their individual merit is exhausted, then they descend out of the higher realms, fall from the higher realm, based on the exhaustion of their merit that has kept them there. All the various different celestial beings, the deities, the worldly deities of the desire realm, the form realm, the formless realm, all such beings, their states are not permanent.
알았더니 다 빼줘놔서 사람입니다. 그거 봐서 다 빼줘놔서 다 뒤에 답을 그냥 너는 다 두석지. 천하 너 강한 삼경 말하죠. 아니 아고요 말했어.
So next we have the contemplation on the contemplation of the various examples of impermanence. This is really pointing out that whatever you investigate, whatever you look into within the outer container of the universe, outer entities of the world, or the inner contents of sentient beings, those things that exist within the universe, you can't find anything that is not impermanent.
다 뭐라더니 직 가서 아니 뇌가 손전 되니 아신게 고지 제로 그래 뇌배 탐하는 뇌배 탐하대 제세라와 왜나 땅아서 뇌배 탐하대 잘했어 가리는지 말 아니 대 탐하 되니 제배 탐하이나 제조래 가르사는 거 제발와
제배 탐하?
응. 대 나기 다 쓰고 탐하든 예를 다 강한데 다 대탐지 강한데 나서 또 빨리 주세요. 아니 유지하나 때니 늦게 사조이나 유지하나 때니 다 상황 제르고 그랬더니 문제 봤어요. 아니 용로고요 말했어.
So in brief, in summary, everything that is exists through things coming together is an amalgamation of parts and pieces coming together. Then naturally will at some point dissipate, be destroyed. There's the saying that that which is gathered together at some point will separate. That which is stacked up will crumble down. That which is born will die, and so forth. Everything that comes together based on causes and conditions will separate again based on causes and conditions, will meet its demise or end based on causes and conditions.
다 너를 되나? 말하는 소가 다 봤어. 좋아? 다 봐. 세대 가서 얘네 하다니 일이지. jorong.
So in brief, what we call impermanence, something that is impermanence within the context of permanence. Impermanence means that which right now is in transition, is changing. That which at present is changing.
되니? 드라드 냐라 jorong, 냐데 드라드 jorong. 여바데 메바 jorong, 메바데 여바 jorong. 찍히는 아메리카 드라 아니 라시아데 다다야 찍히는 돌은 줄이 있어요. 네, 줄스 그래.
Dralaja? 아리기 드라데. Russia.
찍히는 찍히는 부정인데 다 가서 돌아야 줄스 그래.
Everything changing. Our enemies become our friends. Those that have lose what they have. Those that have nothing gain. The enemies of America may become the friends of America. Right now we're talking about Russia, our great enemy, Russia. And now maybe Putin's becoming our buddy. Who knows? It's the nature of the world, right? It's all just like this.
되니? 다? 말하면서 너니 그치 되네 와서 변화 다다로나 다다 그치 찍나? 변화다 와서 가서 지금 상호지 따봐야나? 얘는 저 초초도 안 열어 사버드다 믹스에다 야르지비 작업도 써놓아 저한테 사람도 당해도 야르지비 작업 아메리카다 왔다
Developed.
주야들 내 사바를 독사하고 그러나 왜나 우리가 알아서 아니 그래도 다 가장 다 좋고 하지 아니 잡아도 그렇지 왜나 다 가시들도 왔어 tumbuh 휴지
Jacob on me.
미는 얘가면 찌가찌가를 해서 싫어요 맞나 왜나 미라잖아 다 가장 tumbuh 휴지 근데 다 배치해서 청사자 근데 다 배치해서 와서 며칠을 제거했어 지금 나와 지만은 감사하다 내가 처음 가는 것도 대초죠
Arriba.
아니 가서 미선 과거 가서 초진의 라원체를 써도 같아서 라원체 되게 써도 난 주의하라들 내 하고 쉬어도 와 직전에 되는 거는 좀 빼네 하람 다 왜 되는 거야
Really think about it right now, in the present moment. Change is really quite easily happens. In particular, in these developed countries, it seems, change can happen all of a sudden. That situations of developed countries are really easily transformable, changeable. Whatever they may be. Yesterday, who our friends were our enemy today, and so forth. And I said, we talking about people or countries? Exactly the same. All changes quite easily. For example, with a person, with people, you may have somebody you're in perfect accord with, you're best friends with them. Maybe marry them. You're so compatible that you get married, and then you make your vows until death do us part. We're staying together, and 1 month later, that's it, I've had it. So on the one hand, this is freedom, right? We have our freedom. But really, it's things can change quite dramatically and quite easily.
가시들도 창사 고화 인생 교화 인생에 대해
창사.
잘 그만이 잘 이봐요
Tsar Guba. So, oh, Tsar Guba. That's one. Some people married 9 times, 10 times. Donald Trump, 3, 4.
internet song
Soon. Donald Trump's only 3, right?
되네
Dude.
그래서 얘네 강아들이야 얘네 다 애도 나도 생각했는데 와서 다 강아가 싸먹 가는 들이 어렸을 때 저거
So the point here on this section of the various examples of impermanence is that you can think about anything. You can take anything as your object of contemplation on impermanence. Think about whatever it is.
다 원당 음악이 변했다 와서 지진 내내 나타난 개치우지 때 다 와서 집이 값이 연간 해도 자라 그것도 지진 내내 집이 값은 말하는 저거 좋은 자고 이나야 투투면도 다 변했 있어요 아니 말하는 저 변했다 가르사 도널드 트럼프라고 그러와 아메리칸한테 죽그 내가 봐도 just 혹시도 참아 여기까지 참아 근데 루도 그러면 가야 거고 말해 그 고사게 좀 말해 왕체를 좀 말해 대적을 차로 그러와 근데 선다 다 취득 값은 맞으더니 개와다 근데 뭐 개와다 개를 얘기 근데 저 에너지 내 말도 얘가 맞아 거쳐야 됩니다
Really the most important point for us today is this understanding, gaining this understanding of the uncertainty of the conditions that will lead to our death. Lacking any type of certainty regarding how our death takes place. And also, what is it that will be a benefit or harm at the time of death. So when we die, there's not our closest companion who will be able to do nothing for us to save us. When it's time for us to die, that's it. They can't help us. They can't go with us. Even if you're Donald Trump, super wealthy, have your retinue, whatever it may be. All of that is cast aside at the moment of death. No one, none of your friends, those who work for you, whatever is going with you, none of your wealth is saving you. You're meeting with death alone, going alone. At death, the only thing you're taking with you is the actions you've engaged in, the virtue and non-virtue of what you've engaged in. That's all that you'll be allowed to take with you. And that is all that can be a benefit or a harm to you at the time of death.
That's that come number 잡고 있어요. number 잡고 있는데 다 저거들이 가지고 지톱지 깔았어요. 다 배는 되나이 되는 말아요. 가 가듯이 남치 가와치요. 내가도 와. 나게 타마 가래 마음이 추야고 집로고 삼나. 에? 나서 되니 자기들 남나. 로여도 뭐 강아시. 일반 와서도 하시면 중화가 나오는 텀에 대리장 다다니 개와 쭈럽지 제거도 내가 쌍제제네 개와 가열 라열스도 근데 다 배드지스를 한 것들이 개와 카쇼라쇼 개와 카쇼라쇼 아니 지키는 게 어떻게 하나
그래서 너는 개와 카쇼라쇼
Whenever you get the time, side by side.
단도는 뒤서 강투도 다 가생이 다 개와지는 거죠. 철도 맞잖아. 아니 지가서 차이지 야대버지 회사 많이 썼는데 뒤서도 개와지 들어보고도 something 뭐다 또 스케고 에스 다 되게 누가 당하나 되니 트레이닝 하는데 무다박 처음에 아니 저도 다음 또 이제 쉬스 바이스
So seventh always remembering impermanence, or focusing forcefully on impermanence. So the seventh section is really relates or is within the context of post-meditation. We're off the cushion, doing whatever it is we may be doing, to be constantly remembering or reflecting on our own impermanence, our own death. When it's uncertain when I will die, how I will die, what will lead to my death, might I die today, sort of thing. So thinking in this way then urges us to engage in virtue right now in the present moment. Thinking in this way, constantly remembering, reflecting on impermanence, then instead of thinking, one day, once everything's like put together well, I'll be able to accomplish the Dharma perfectly. In my old age, then I'll be able to do the Dharma well. So to not do that, because there's no guarantee that that day will arrive. But instead to, right now, and moment by moment, and every chance we get to take advantage of that, to do the right thing, engage in virtue. At all times, every opportunity, every minute opportunity we have to do that right now, instead of setting aside, coming up with some scheme, some sort of plan for when we can change, when we can engage in virtue, when we can engage in the Dharma. So the thinking in this way, that's the point of it, to make us engage in virtue right now. So our topic for today was the contemplation on impermanence. So this concludes our Rinpoche's brief summary teachings on impermanence.
이제 그거를 가려웠으나 맞아요. 나빠도 거나 아니 맞아요. 야 아니 광고지 추를 받아 나는 좀 꿀게 제대로 알았어. 옛날에 나는 좀 단적으로 지기나 로호에 그 통따라 아자지 쉬어보이나 좀 조스로 그러와. 된다고 제죠. 대대서다 얘네 다 나는 좀 그냥 개발 줘봐. 근데 지금 와서 아니 당고 놓주야. 근데 개발도서 지파 아니 이월도 지 그려야야. 그다음부터 서만 스탠바이나 근데 아주 개발을 하는 신급에 숙체도 그래 양긴 정도 줘 그래. 이제는 그래서 이거요. 그거 같아요.
So what's the need for meditating on impermanence? So through meditating on impermanence, if we meditate on impermanence, recollect impermanence, and it acts as an encouragement for our engaging in virtue. It's really analogous to like a riding crop. The riding crop of meditation on impermanence. You're riding a horse, you want the horse to go faster, you hit it with your riding crop. Right when you hit it, the horse goes off faster. And it's really just like that with recollecting impermanence. By turning our mind towards, or by recollecting impermanence, then first it turns our mind towards the accomplishment of virtue. By knowing everything to be impermanent, our mind will naturally turn towards virtue. Having naturally turned towards virtue and continuing to meditate on impermanence, then it will increase our engagement with virtuous activity. It will make our virtuous activity swifter, more powerful, more. So that's the function. That's what the meditation on impermanence is doing. It's inspiring or encouraging us to the accomplishment of virtue. Questions? Any internet folk, if you have questions, you can write them. I'll come read them. One or two, maybe. Can someone ask the person who is coughing to move away from the computer? It's Rinpoche. That's the only question you guys have. 되게 거란 말이에요.
니만 개발이라서 믿음도 또 치고 얘네들 그래서 세금도 농업견들도 쉬지 소망도 신경 쓰다. 그래서 세금도 님만 해서 그렇지 비밀이다. 그래서 가지고
correct me if I'm wrong. So, regarding the diminishing of the form, lifespan, and power of beings, and how it's described in Buddhist explanations versus like scientific explanations. There's teachings that say humans used to live for much longer, 500 years. They were much more powerful, resplendent forms, but scientists say, no, they used to be smaller, shorter, and were monkeys. Yeah? So, yeah. Who's right?
아니, 다, 나라서 벌방 뭐지 나라는 약속이야 다 비우는 those.
Well, in the history of the Tibetan people, how the Tibetan people came about, they came about from monkeys. In the Tibetan historical explanation. Perfectly in line with those scientists, Tibetan teaching on where people came from.
이거야 코존 아바아마가 메인부터 와서 아바아마가 메인 상황 요랬어. 이거는 옆들 아바들이想就是 봤어. 아마들은 강수 모습에서 이거 담고 동스 근데 동들이 깔레 대체하고 자고 와서 담고 보고 깔레
Oh yeah. The scientists, they don't know the names of their, the first monkeys that led the people. But in the Tibetan historical annals of the histories of the Tibetan people, even though the names are hard. We came from the Bodhisattva monkey who met with the cliff-dwelling Buddhist. Anyway, and then from them came 6. They had 6 progeny, the 2 of them, and then those were like the initial clans of the Tibetan people that spread out.
그러니까 사실 가르쳤더니 딱 말하는 저그 나서 배드기서 했더니 즉 지나다 말하는 저그 아니 기타는 때를 들었어요. 가르쳐. 자 말하는 저 당국이 지 콜레가 하트서 말하지 최비로 시작이 왔어. 지기는 최고도 하트서 인도했어. 맞아도 당국 프로빈스 기다는 말하는 다 그래서 당국에 뭐지 당국 앞에는 집행에 야를 차더니 그 신경도 담고 양 나서나 나다 가르쳐요. 그래서 말하는 그 사고도 왔다 가도 되는 zukam다. zukam이 되는 것도 말하는 당국 지도 직전에 zukam을 당국 지는 인도 사이로 저기는 코를 쳐고 열었어.
Jude?
zukam이 당국을 나고 때. zukam도 최고의 사람. zukam도 함기단도 함기다들고 zukam도 함도서 마사고. 얘는 얘는
about this being long-lived and powerful. So there's also this explanation of as we talk about the world or the universe that develops upward and sentient beings which like fall downward or develop downward. So, which is likely referring to or often referring to the from the divine realms, from the God realms, beings like descended downward. So maybe when these teachings on exalted, long-lived beings that are very powerful, that's what it's referring to. Beings that initially were in divine realms, the gods that were long-lived, resplendent, descending down into as humans. we think it's in particular from the form realms. We have the desire realm, form realm, formless realm. Gods of the form realm descending down as humans. Maybe those were the first humans. Maybe that fits with this explanation, with a question. The first monkey.
So, since things are looking so bleak with us, how can we hasten the rainbow body so we can not have to go through unnecessary torture?
Things another natural mepe dabo natural yambada dubru jogi yota then a jalu tobia dela Congress chopo tangyaki tashi yapochi karare hangin sena netu de dabo gyundu deba yena dene dugna cheru nyongore dene jalu halave chopo Congress drugore.
That is Nyamlan Jopachirat. Jopacharos. And I should have.
You practice well. Practice a lot. Meditate a lot. That's the fastest way to get rainbow body.
Suge, sit on the dinner, did it was, now good also. Minute chapel middle. Then regular chapel yama, kind yama, suge then. So the chapel, this 100 over a mother, and that is chapel job, but did you put us in anger?
Whoever has diligence, whoever has the most zeal. In the Buddhist tradition, we say with the Buddha Dharma, there's no difference between who you are, male, female, what class or caste you may be from. Whoever has diligence is the one that will reach Buddhahood. Really, that's the crucial key point to gaining accomplishment, diligence.
And that's what you said.
Bert?
Okay. Well, if humans go extinct on Earth, would it be possible to be born as a human on another planet?
So the question was, if humans go extinct on planet Earth, is it possible to be reborn as a human on another planet? Jikandi rang me chikyang mebe chakwa ina. Jiktin shembala me yempe kewa len sigire. There's countless worlds. So yes.
No.
But don't be certain. People, I talk about Atlanta Buddhists, they say, always talk about impermanence, just depressing, anxiety causing, and maybe it is, but, can be kind of discouraging. So, is just continuing your practice the way to sort of get through those feelings about this topic. I mean, it seems like all the talk about impermanence kind of eliminates any procrastination about practicing this.
So the question was, so us Buddhists, we always talk about impermanence, and all this talk and focus on impermanence, doesn't it just lead to worry, anxiety, and sadness, discouragement?
Yeah.
So then is the point to, what was the point?
So, what would you say, how is it
To avoid
you just
discouragement.
practice? Is that the only way maybe to get through some of the feelings about, the reality of impermanence?
sort of get away from the discouragement, just focus on practice.
Is that the
Is that the point? Or is that the function? So we talk about it. Kailan nava yingen kailan to tapa we talk like kola yung drangi do some tangi do shagi do. And we talk about kyang kola jamba yena then lo pangi do. Lo pangi ore samshu chak jogi ore. Lo pangi ore. Samshu la la jogi ore. Then go down the karataba sena ni talk about janyatla. Ne talk about younger jena lo pamba yena then nyamdan chena. Lo pamba de mebazogi.
Da metaba singing ko rang yin re de yo. Ma su sam jiang ro, ma sam jiang ro ko rang yin re. Le ba. Eden ngarang zu ge dongar singing de sam lo ta na ya ro, ma tang ya ro. Dong ko khola di ma na. Le ba. Ko rang yin dongar yin ba da chi. Sam lo ta na ene eden ngarang zu de da wa le. Eden ta ngarang zu ge ni ngā tsū sū kōla nā tsā tā būchī. Pē nā, yō mē ngā tsū nā pē nī, ngā tsū nā tsā tā yō bā xī nī, tē nā zō kyō kia tū tuwa, ngā tsū tā pē tā, tē nī ngā tsū tā kāyā mī tū tē yī nā yā, ngā rā yī kē tē nā sū kōla tē yō tsā, nā tsā tē yō nā, tē nī ngā rā tō tē zō kyō kia, tē nī mē kā nō rō, tē nī ngā tsū kī kī nā zō kia yā tuwa. Kāyā sā nō mā rā yō nī yō rē yō, tē nī pē tē sē kō kā sā pē nā, 직기나 되네 가르쳤다 맨 강나는 도나 가서 깨장 내바들 고운 그러와 직기나 처랑은 데라 내도 직기를 데라 깨서도 도들 직도 스키바라 아니 데라 사람마다 여기잖아 주간 사람마다 여기잖아 세번 방어 말아 찍고 내 좋으나 요스키로 그래
So the thing to get is that impermanence is the nature of things. It's how things actually are. Whether or not we're thinking about it or not, things are impermanent. That's just what they are. If we think a lot about impermanence, they're impermanent. If we don't think about it at all, it's still impermanent. This is the nature of it. It's also similar to suffering, like contemplation on suffering. Suffering is the nature of samsara. We're sentient beings, you're existing in samsara. There is suffering, that's the very nature of being in cyclic existence. Whether or not we think about it, there is suffering. Maybe a good analogy for this is being sick, having some type of bad physical ailment. So you go to the doctor to be examined, physical examination, see if you're sick with something or not. So if you do that, if you look into the situation of your body and you find some sort of illness in your body, then you can do something about it. Then a means to change it, to heal it, is available. Yes, you're going to be sad when the doctor tells you you have cancer or whatever it may be. Yeah, you'll become sad. But then there's an opportunity to do something about it, right? So it's really just like that. Should we avoid going to the hospital because they might give us some bad news? They might tell us we're sick, we have cancer or something. Sure, if we do that, we won't be saddened by the knowing the reality of the situation. We'll also die much sooner. So kind of like up to you sort of thing.
Ngāca nāngbāki tī Ameriki mīksa tāpa dūsi. Ngāna nāya lō tāpa, mēkāna nō dī lō tāpche tā dī lō.
Purva deha?
Ngāre, purva tī tō yō māre. Purva tī Amerika mīksa, ngāna nāya tāpa tāche tāme pēshāma wātā nō dī lō. Ngāca tī samō dāngi dūsi. Ngāca tēne tātā tē mēne ngāca tōngā dētā samō tāngi pō dī lō. Amerika mīksa yāna sī pōli tērā wachē lō. Kīpāra wātā 나서 성도 참석하다 봐 카트리스 지금 셔저건 좀 뽑거든 만나서 앞에도 싫어하는 매카는 이니 다 넘어서는 로그를 맞고 가야 말이야
It's kind of a way of acting and thinking is like the opposite for Tibetans with how like Americans go to the hospital. We're always going to the hospital. We're spending all kinds of money. Nothing's wrong with us at all. We're going to get our checkups. Something wrong with me? Tell me, doc. I pay all sorts of money to find out what may or may not be wrong with us. Tibetans never go to the hospital. You don't go to the hospital until you're on your deathbed. Only then if somebody's like carrying you in, you're dying. You never go if you're not. Oh, doc, I might be sick. Check me out. You don't do that, but you do, think about suffering and stuff.
The Tibetans, the Buddhists, they think before dying about the impermanence of it. But Americans don't do that.
Yeah.
Thinking back.
Yeah, just like the Buddhists, the whole thing's opposite. The Buddhists don't go to the hospital, they think about impermanence and suffering and stuff. Do it, Kasha.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some internet question. How did Guru Rinpoche die? That's what doing. Andres. Tongwari. Bukan doing.
Memang juga.
Rinpoche.
Memang juga ini datang kerana sesuatu itu doa. Ini jalan itu doa jalan itu. Jalan itu ini ngaran sudah. Ini 그냥 저거지 이거 말해. 내가 무슨 저거 줬다. 차로 앞에는 때려 지나가. 이거를 뭐지데? 그리고 열도 있거래서. 열도 있거든요. 저는 지 내가 동생으로 미세죠, 정말.
So how did Guru Rinpoche die? Guru Rinpoche attained what we call the rainbow body of the Vajrakaya, the rainbow body of the Vajra body, while still around there. So for the beings, for individuals that attain that state, rainbow body, Vajrakaya, they don't die. They go somewhere else, but there's not like a death to them.
There's no dying in birth. Although we can't see it with our naked eye, but there's no death in birth for that state.
For that state, it has gone beyond any type of birth or death, even though Guru Rinpoche did not die, cannot die, having attained that. That being said, we can't see him right here.
얘네들은 말하는 소리다. 말봐. There was the cheaper race.
But for us right now, we don't see him, so it's just like he died.
One last comment. It seems like, really thinking about the impermanence, and I think it really might help cut the attachment and clinging to samsara. So in that way, it seems like really good in terms of practitioners.
Corway, Shempa, Chapa, Hanyaki, Tashi Pay Apotik and Haze, and then Yamlan Tegan Yina, Penny, Daily on Penny.
내가 내가 보는데 얘네 괜찮아 많고요. 나가.
So the question was, it seems that through meditating, reflecting on impermanence, that it also serves to get rid of one's attachment and clinging to samsara. So Rinpoche says, yes, definitely, meditating on impermanence has all sorts of good qualities to it, good benefits.
Yeah.
I just have one more question. You said that even the holy beings, there's nothing left of them but their stories. So does that mean nobody's helping us up there, down here?
Up there.
Kyo Dhamma Dedo. Kyo Dhamma Dedo. Petsai. Kongsoki Logyuma Tokyomare. Then they, like their blessings aren't here.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah.
And then Kongsoki Chinlap. Gyomare. Kongsoki Natsola Tukje Zigyomare. Kongsoki Logyuma Tokyomare sa.
근데 말했어. 애니 가다 애니 대마도 요 말에 생긴데 먼저 넣지 마도 아니 요 말에 생긴데 다당 말한 쪽이다. 배나 애니 아 양께도 좀 말한 쪽 같은 거다. 미라고지나 살다. 대집도와 되기 때문에 걸로주 되고 다다 배는 거다운 되게 망고도 왔대 되라고 여러가다 사기들. 이나요 얘네가 코로나 파괴다 반대 사지게 톡을 인타당하는 쪽을 애네 이 시대 양 싫어요 말했어. 양 톡을 이 시대 애네 생견라 애네 당하는 쪽을 고쳐 사기는 쳔바당 제와다 니바 솜요래. 봐. 쳔바 제와 니바 솜 여바라 때니 배나 다당하는 쪽을 사지게 그렇게 거든데 하고 용해 봐. 배나다 산지게 지가랑 저 생전에 그렇게 꼬마고 용고요래. 근데 때나 이게 다 지가랑 저거 누수 패통. 양가랑 저거 쏘았다나. 양가랑 저거 주니치가 저거 산지게 마 톡 정글돼서 패. 양가랑 저거 배는 참참나더니 집에서 배는 산지에 돼서 양 소소한 게다 양해 받아서 그 괜히 지 그거를 못 제당도 소패도 제대로더니 양 섬도지 샤르세 롱데 신gel랍더니 요래 내가더니 가랑 저거더니 와서 되지 말더라 그래 말해 되게 돌다 아니 이래스 미라미오레스.
So the history meaning they're not like physically present here. We have their histories, their images, statues of them, images of them, tankas of them, and so forth. So just that is left of them, like in that sense. That being said, the wisdom of the enlightened mind of the Buddhas is never dies, and can be experienced by sentient beings, can benefit sentient beings. We talk about, in particular, the qualities of wisdom, love, and power of the enlightened being, Kensei Nu. These three particular enlightened qualities: the wisdom or the knowing aspect, the love, and the power. And through this, then, the Buddhas, the enlightened beings, manifest in all sorts of ways. We have to marry at different Nirmanakaya emanations of the enlightened beings, emanating to directly benefit beings. And in that way, beings, ordinary sentient beings, experience the direct benefit of enlightened beings. Likewise, through the power of prayer, supplicating to the Buddhas, then we can invoke their blessings, invoke the blessings of the enlightened mind of Buddhas. We can be filled with that. And also for individual practitioners, for people engaging assiduously in practice, there are many stories, and there's the potential to actually directly meet with enlightened beings, directly meet with Guru Rinpoche. Call it the meeting with the face-to-face with the enlightened being, where such visions can happen, those experiences can happen, receive prophecies, receive blessings in that way as well. So in that way, they're quite different than just ordinary beings being dead and gone like that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so like, is absolutely everything impermanent? Because there's also like, I don't know, so would you say like people who become enlightened, like is that state of enlightenment also impermanent?
Lopan's teaching Julama in the spring. Talk about that. Yeah. Tamche, mitapare, mitape chochente. Ne sang yeba yina. Delayang mi takbayina? Tabe tobayina, de takbayina, mi takbayina. Mi takba church, takba church.
네. 다 상계나 애는 말은 저 가래서 맞죠 그랬다. 코에 기다지 말은 저거더니 맞죠 코로가 되기나 딱 데려들어. 배는 말은 저 되는 뭐다 봐도 동아리를 되도록 뭐다 봐. 동아리 생인데 그 코에 기운이도 애네 상지라 되는 말은 저거 되게 되는 말은 저 애네 뭐다 봐. 자 되는 맞죠 가서 동아리 왔으니 다 전에 야 거쳐와 시와 양년 게 봤어도 양년에서 동아리야 되는 맞죠 동아리 장소로 거쳐 내가 되는 말은 저거 배나 애네 땐도 대화서 다시 여러 가서 땐도 대화서 다양 조언을 좀 해봐 애네 거저 배 애네 땐도 대화서 어다 그래서 상기 지당 아주 한데 애네 당연히 대가서 들어서 비 애네 다원에서
So yes, the stage of Buddhahood is permanent. There's some other stuff I didn't get. Buddhahood, complete enlightenment. First, we can start with samsara. So again, the nature of samsara is these qualities of impermanence and the suffering of impermanence. Suffering and impermanence, that's the nature of samsara, cyclic existence. So the stage of Buddhahood, Buddhahood is the transcendence of all that, the transcendence of the ocean of suffering that is samsara. We talk about nirvana, the peace of nirvana. Nirvana literally means the transcendence of torment. So having transcended all that, arrived at a state of literally stable bliss, stable happiness, which is immutable, unchanging, permanent happiness, a permanent state of well-being, bliss. That is what the level of Buddhahood is. So yes, we can say Buddhahood is permanent.
얘네 남카다 죽어 남카다 내려더니 말하는 저거 그랬더니 세다 하다 내더니 싸니 호와다 본줄도 그랬더니 싸니 되는 거졌다 매발했어
Buddhahood, Dharmakaya, truth body, the sky-like or space-like expanse of the Dharmakaya. Space-like in that it has no perimeter, no boundary, no limit, transcends any type of transformation or change.
네 기다는 거다 말하는 속에 대답을 빼는 말하는 속에 샘그 춘이대 어쨌든 샘랑 그 춘이지 어려워 춘이대 같이 대화를 해서 찍어야 해서 샘그 춘이대는 어떤에 권유를 요만했어.
In general, too, when we talk about the nature of the mind, the essence or nature of our own mind, it's also just like that, beyond any transformation or change.
그러니까 뒤라 되는 말하는 속은 말하고 버리 그런 거 저거 되게 괜히 되게 잘 들려. 뭔가 잘 들려. 뒤라 렉선은 말하는 속이 융미. 여기다 그래서 융마선다 많이 힘. 근데 땡지더니 다 찍어라고 저거 아니 데뷔 공부하고 지가 뭐 내쪽으로 해. 양 되게 많이 다 상계에서는 양 생계에 더 힘이 되더니 지금 와서 막 들고 다고 그냥 내가 지금 와서 배치서 드라마를 통해서 생계나 배마다 대마다 이제 그걸 했어.
But until we arrive at that point, stuck in this mess, we have all these problems. Until that is reached, realized, then we have what we have. But once that is realized, which is the true nature, the innate state, the true nature of reality itself, then once that is achieved, that stage is arrived at, then it is pervaded by an everlasting, stable bliss, happiness. And then from that, within that state, having attained enlightenment, Buddhahood, in that state, then from that state, one naturally emanates out in myriad different ways to accomplish the welfare of sentient beings, just as naturally, automatically emanates out, accomplishing in many different ways the benefits for and the well-being and happiness of beings.
올라서 야구에서 타마되면 되니까 괜히 와서 처음 생계에서 이제 처음 사기지 공부했는데 이제 토양 만남적이.
Okay, we'll stop there. Great place to stop. Stop there, and adding to it own aspirations that may all sentient beings attain this stage of Buddhahood.
야야, 되네 참을 저야고 저스트링 되네 참아 되네 다 투지체스.
Thank you all, and great questions today. Thank you for those.
Tamje zenganye tonganye betane pande jengega nache pala tukaya sebe zone doa doa shu jamba chisara jemba da gando zambo de ande shinja de da gyuje chiso da jewa de da kandera motuso shibe jewa tanje ge moa kanga chudo apada da ge ge so de banya zambo Kore shinkamsu benda dewa maru jungwe ninjere so tense gyatso ye shope sunye mato dengyo jismi omzo de gyawa nyoyo yiche gyome reme lembe yanse rato moje yenre sama tense jumbuze nade nere range jismu lama dura nama so nisheba kuze deva so Chande la jenge barazo ande la matanda wa membra jenge. Allez, là, on tenait un homework. Il est là, il est là, il est convaincu pour moi. Convaincu pour moi pour
It's a good digging on Lojong Day. We talk a lot.
Yeah, 되게 Lojong.
We talk about Lojong dan.
Kita baru Lojong tak ada di lama dulu. Kita baru Lojong cewek. Kalau studi kita baru kita gitu ni register tua pernah. Nu jika nu syakit, jual syakit, syakson,
Chula Shaksun.
Ini tak jiwa tambah syakit, jiwa tak boleh syakit. Ini hendak sukan cik lendo. Ini yang tak baca, coba dia ni, tak lanjut dah ni, tak cikin ini boleh. Lanjut sendiri mengapa ni tak boleh kita coba kasa. Ini dia, dia tadi.
Ini dia dunda cilet mantap cari. Ini cu cari.
Boleh. Ini ada, tak kalau dia disser doa. Ini ada besar jadi. So kasa boleh. 다 담배 지우도 책이 지우고 가서 다 지우고 닦고 당 그래서 제가 지금 가지고도 집 가서 다
Ini rere ni macik cikbo.
다 이제나 됐어라 된다 배전어서 됐다 믹서지 요마가 아까 그 눈치가 아저 teleteche 근데 예수가 또 믹서기야 배로데 퀄리티가
So the homework for next week, read the next section of our two texts on the suffering of samsara chapter. So read on the suffering of samsara and then meditate on the Lojong practice, contemplate on impermanence. So our text itself and the tradition itself were to, I think it totals like 10 days total on contemplating on impermanence. That's kind of just how they're broken out. But anyway, we have a week, so just contemplate on impermanence for a week until we meet again.
You could go over the names of the two texts that we're supposed to be.
Words of my perfect teacher and a guide to the words of my perfect teacher.
I have that.
Mm-hmm.